Hi everyone. I have this lovely handmade lead crystal paperweight, beautifully thick and chunky. One edge is slightly more rounded than the other, and I'm going to be engraving on the underside. So the rounded edge is on the top. Now, many years ago, in the 80s and 90s, this is how I created a symmetrical drawing. I've done half of my version of a scarab beetle on a bit of tracing paper. This is long before I ever had a computer, or were there even computers? Certainly not domestic ones in Zimbabwe, and certainly not the internet. I found tracing paper incredibly useful with my artwork, and I was able to keep it as a record. Half of a sun and half of a body, and then obviously half a wing. From what I can gather, you can be quite creative with this little character. The sun that it's holding is quite important because the Egyptians apparently thought highly of the scarab beetle. The sun, when it came up every morning, reminded them of how the beetles pushed along their bits of dung. So in Africa we call them dung beetles. Whether the scarab is exactly the same, I'm not sure, but I believe it's something along those lines. So you'll often see the images with a sun. Do excuse the scrappy old bit of glass I've got underneath. Anyway, right, as you can see, folded it over, and the reason for the glass is this. When you hold it up, you can see very, very easily through the tracing paper. And I, on many occasions, excuse the glass, on many occasions used to use the window. Just hold the piece of paper up against the window and let the natural light give me the same effect. And then you grab your pen and simply trace over what you've drawn. Of course, in this day and age, there are light boxes. Same sort of thing. Light boxes are very useful. Usually with a bit of LED. They're usually quite cheap. But this is a very simple version of doing it in an office. I think you can be quite free with the decorating that you do on these beetles. And there you go. Asymmetrical scarab beetle. Now place it on your glass and tape it nicely in place once you are happy with its position. And something else that's really, really ancient is old typewriter paper. I would literally have used it straight out of the typewriter, and the thought of using a typewriter in those days. In fact, I think I even stepped up and had an electric typewriter at one point. Here I have got what is called a dotting pen. It's what the nail artists use to put little dots on your nails with the paint. This is very useful for tracing over your artwork and leaving a mark through the tracing paper. There are various types of tracing paper you can get, sort of a waxy paper that you use in dressmaking, but I really think that if you can get your hands on something thin like this paper, there we go, you can see how well that shows up. Yeah, I prefer a paper that is really quite thin, as is this typewriter paper. I'm sure we can still get something vaguely similar. The other thing is to take your the white pencil or even a black pencil and scribble over the other side of your artwork, and that is almost like having a built-in carbon. So when you've really scribbled nicely over it, then you just trace it on, as I'm doing now. And dotting pens, they come in various sizes. I used quite a thick one there, but in actual fact a smaller one would be fine and probably better, but it's quite clear what's going on. You can also use a ballpoint pen. Right, here is a very ancient, but would you believe, I decided to show you how in the old days I used to do exactly the same and then stick it into a book. Now this is actually 1991, and I had been doing this since 1983, so it was quite a number of years that I was using this very tactic. Still no computer. So I used to handwrite with an ink calligraphy pen and then do my little drawings. Anything you see symmetrical I would have folded in half and done exactly what I've just shown you. And I thought it's a good idea to keep a record of these things, which I often used to use when people had broken the glass and came back and wanted more. So clearly this poor old I've got loads and loads of these books, but unfortunately I'm missing the first few books, which were quite precious, and they never got back to me from Africa, so which was really sad. You can see how I'd cut into the paper there to fit into a curved glass, and of course I would simply put this behind the glass, stick it with a bit of white tack, and then engrave it. I realized the importance of keeping a record of absolutely every single order, and of course for over the years, now as I speak, over 43 years, I have records of literally every single order. Apart from, as I say, the first couple of years, those books are missing, which is really sad. They're floating around somewhere in Africa. But it was, it's really, really quite emotional looking back. And the weird thing is, I can remember most of the orders. It's just bonkers. I can't remember who ordered them, but the actual physical engraving I remember very, very well. I can remember the conversations, for example, with that pearl wedding there. I can remember that well. You can see this scorpion that is also symmetrical, and I folded that bottom to top to get that traced symmetrically. I have a feeling that that flower design was put on a mirror. I really, really enjoyed my years of doing this. It was very, very special. And as you can see, I created in fact, this was a glass plate when the Queen Elizabeth came. She came over for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Harare. So I made a little commemorative plate. Just a few more. I couldn't stop looking at these. I had to put it down and get on with my work. But it's just quite sad how the sellotape really didn't last very well. And I've lost a lot of the artwork. It's all fallen out at some point. That would have been a large panel of glass that was placed at the front of the building. And I remember that particular order with the lady. She wanted candles coming out the ears of a lady's face. And I thought, how very, very odd. I remember that conversation so well. Anyhow. Fascinating. I was using graph paper, as you can see, because I found that quite useful for getting the lettering and the layout even. So old. Sorry, I'm dragging you a little bit down memory lane. I mean, this is just a tiny, tiny fraction. Over the years, I have engraved literally thousands and thousands of commissions. It's interesting there. I see I made a note this size times 3 on that little previous image, and that is because I used to have to take it to a copy shop basically, and have it photocopied, and they would have to punch in the fact. I'm just showing you the graph paper there. They would have to punch in the fact that I want it 3 times bigger so that I could get it printed to the size I need for whatever panel I'm using, whether it's a mirror or whatever. I hate engraving on mirrors, but I know that I did a few mirrors in those days. Lots of working in pencil. That's simply so you can rub it out and adjust it. Today's equivalent being Control-Z on your keyboard. If you happen to spot your artwork, do let me know. My goodness gracious me. That would be good. Anyway, put it away. Let's get back in the room, back to the present. Right, as you can see, the black crayon, or the black carbon against the black background doesn't work, so popping some white paper behind it, I can now see very clearly what's going on. I have a kind of medium-sized diamond in the drill and just flying over all the shapes. You can see that I turned the paperweight upside down just because that shape is easier for me to engrave smoothly. Just turn your glass so that it is comfortable to work in the direction that feels comfortable. Using a paintbrush there, and I'm just wafting away the dust so that I can see what's going on. Using a scrap piece of glass just to test this little diamond that I'm about to use. It's a little bit old and probably needs to be flattened on the top to get to some fresh diamond, but I'm just putting the tiny little end bits of the feet. Or hands, or whatever they were. What would you call the ends of these little legs? Yeah. A larger diamond now. And I'm slowly creating a circular movement to make the sun. Obviously, I don't want a donut, so I'm going to be going in and out and in and out, and making sure that the middle bit is deeper than the rest of it so that it's a nice even sphere. You can see I'm working dry for the moment. I want the middle of it to be as bright as possible, and so in fact working dry does produce quite a bright effect. Especially with this. This is quite a coarse diamond. Now I can take the paper away and you can see what's going on. This is beautiful, beautiful lead crystal. It's not the optical crystal, it's lead crystal. Just going a bit deeper. And of course I'm working dry still. It would be a little bit trickier if it was really tough glass. I would probably just use water. You can see the amount of dust coming off. Make sure you've got your mask on. So I'm going to literally be carving into all these shapes. It's a really, really simple subject. You know, these are just basic shapes. I want them all to be quite deep. So it does, when you turn it around, the light will catch all the lumps and bumps. And just have, you know, a lot of fun with it, really. There you can see how the light, he looks a bit like a frog at the moment. Anyway, I'm using water now and I'm just going full tilt and just gouging away. I'm not sure how fast I've sped this up, but obviously this is not real time. At the moment, he looks like a certain tire tube advert. When you're doing layers like this, start with the background layer and then come forward deeper and deeper. Well, not deeper and deeper in this case, just do the background first. I'm just playing around a bit, adding some interesting shapes and interesting depths. Right, starting with the wings, I decided to start up there and then I thought, no, start at the bottom. Because if you are doing any overlapping, it's going to overlap nicely over the previous one. This is a great subject because it's just so easy. So incredibly easy. Here I'm using water. on the outside, which is slightly smoother. You can see the difference between the middle and the outside. It's the same burr, but this time it's with water. And because I'm wanting the outer edges of the sun to be a little bit smoother and duller than the middle, only fractionally, but it's just an effect that I'm wanting to add. So I've already done the second wing. And I've got that very small diamond in the drill and just adding a little feature in the middle there. There's so much more you can do. I mean, you can write all over it. You know, quite often they put hieroglyphics on the beetles. This is a smaller diamond. So I'm starting off at the wider edge of the leg bits, deep, and flicking across so that it's not as deep on the skinnier bits. And just making sure that the wider bit overlaps the skinny bit. This is actually a green stone, and I've decided to use it with water, and this will give it a slightly softer effect than its normal effect when I use it dry. And just literally going very lightly over the whole area, and this takes away any clear glass that's in between and any little chippy bits. Back to the smaller diamond, because I forgot to do his bottom legs. Just adding in some eyes on the side. This is the little Dura white, and just for fun, I'm using water. And you know me, I don't normally use water with my stones, especially the Dura white, only because to me it wears them out faster, but it does produce a lovely smooth look. If you look at that, that's really, really clear already. And by going around the sun, it just gives the sun an interesting hue on the edges. This is a rubber disc, and I'm just flying over the top, and so that it picks up any edges and polishes them in a nanosecond. This is a softer rubber, which is going to go into the shapes a little bit more. Now these are actually very colorful. Of course, I'm not working in colour, so I'm just adding a variety of shades. As I say, you can play around with this for hours and hours, adding all sorts of interesting textures and shapes and designs. I still think he looks like a frog. Got to do something about that. I do in the end. I do. Dura white, just so that I can make a couple of these little jewels. Nice and shiny. And using a teeny tiny wheel, just fancied playing around a bit. Now that looks like he's a golfer. He's got a golf ball on a tea peg. Very, very coarse diamond, and working dry, I just wanted to add some brightness, as much brightness as I can to the middle of the sun. And then just flying over some of the upper surfaces. This is also a very coarse diamond. And using a very small diamond, I'm just looking at some of the edges of the wings where I could still see a bit of an outline. And I don't like to see outlines, so I just decided to blend them in a little bit. Just decided to give the fellow some eyelids to put his eyes slightly more to the side. Still looks like a frog. He's a frog, spider, dung beetle kind of scarab. I love it. I absolutely love it. It is such fun. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a great deal of fun creating your own scarab beetle. Thanks for watching, guys. All the best. See you next time. Bye for now.